We are here today to mourn the very deep loss of Cynthia Atkins, matriarch of her family and matriarch of this temple. We gather here with profound gratitude to Cynthia and her beloved Harvey, for without them we would not be here, as it was their vision that created and shaped this community. Today we honor and start to remember Cynthia's long and very full life of 96 years. It is a shock because I imagine some of us thought that Cynthia and Harvey would live forever. But none of us do. That is not the way of our world. Cynthia's spirit filled this sanctuary for so many years and continues to do so today. We are here to support and comfort Cynthia's beloved family, her husband Harvey of 72 remarkable years, Liz, Jane, and Peggy, their husbands, Cynthia's grandchildren and great-grandchildren, her sister and brother. We are all here to hold you up through this valley of the shadow of death. Cynthia would take comfort in knowing that we are all here in her beloved second home of Temple Beth David. She would want us to sing along. And so let this sacred time and space envelop us as we begin to remember Cynthia's life and honor her memory. We turn to words of Jewish tradition for comfort and strength. Psalm 15. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them, or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. In the words of Psalm 121, I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth.
Shir lamalot, esayna el-harim, oy me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz, al yitem
And I invite you to join with me in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Mizmor David, Adonai rohi lo echsar. Bin ot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yenaleni. Nafshi shovev, yancheni v'magele tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech beketzal mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shiftecha u'mish'antecha, hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, neged tzorerai. Tishanta v'shemen roshi, hosir revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai. V'shavti bevet Adonai le'orech yamim.
How can we encapsulate such a full and vibrant life? I entrust that my dear predecessor and colleague, Rabbi Zub, the master, will. I imagine in a moment that he will share how Cynthia and Harvey helped bring him to serve this community as a young rabbi. I would like to think that I am here as well with special gratitude to Cynthia. When I was interviewing, thanks to the thoughtfulness of co-chairs, past President Amy Cook and current President Lisa Fasberg-Weller, they had me meet in person with Cynthia and Harvey. As they shared their stories and pride in this community, I knew that this was a very special and holy place. I'm pretty sure that if Cynthia had not approved, I would not have gotten the job. I remember Cynthia telling me early on in her very direct way that we are ready for a woman to lead. During the 60th anniversary celebration of this temple, I facilitated some temple teens to interview Cynthia and Harvey. Always a proponent of lifelong learning, Cynthia turned this into a valuable teaching moment for them. I could always count on Cynthia to offer some of the most brilliant and poignant comments during my weekly Talmud class and other adult learning. I was honored to bless Cynthia and Harvey on their 70th wedding anniversary. They stood on this bima together just as they did under their chuppah. I remember Cynthia telling me that one of the secrets of their marriage was their ability to talk to each other about everything, and with that twinkle in her eye, that heart Harvey had to listen to her. A lover of music, Cynthia came to appreciate the more recent addition of piano and other instruments in our high holiday services. The oldest Temple members to participate in our congregational retreats, Cynthia was thrilled by the growth in our religious school and the opening of our preschool during recent years. I believe she took comfort in knowing that what she started here is continuing to thrive. Her great-granddaughter was recently named here with another great-granddaughter on the way. Cynthia's loving presence and spirit will live on, Lidor Vador, from one generation to the next.
In 1960, 65 years ago, Harvey and Cynthia Atkins helped the Dedham Westwood Jewish Community Group understand that there was a compelling need for a synagogue to observe Judaism and to educate their children. And so when I think of Cynthia and Harvey, I think of them as a kind of Abraham and Sarah. Without Abraham and Sarah, there would be no Judaism. Without Harvey and Cynthia, there would be no Temple Beth David. By saying that rather stark declaration, I do not mean to say that the Jews of Westwood and Dedham and the surrounding communities would not have formed a synagogue if not for Harvey and Cynthia. What I mean is that the atmosphere of a warm and welcoming congregation, the awareness of the members of this congregation that Talmud Torah, the study of Torah, is a priority, and the commitment of many of our members to attend services on a regular basis were priorities for Harvey and Cynthia, which have helped shape and sustain this temple for over 6 decades. You may be aware that there are 2 kinds of congregations. There are congregations which are lemons. They are cold, unwelcoming, sour, divisive synagogues. Then there are congregations which are plums. They are warm, welcoming, and cooperative. The minute I walked into the Temple Beth David Synagogue building on Pond Street in the spring of 1970, I sensed that this congregation was a plum. Because on that very first night of my visit, members of the temple were in their work clothes, varnishing the floor of the synagogue, and they were having a blast. Of course, it takes more than just a single couple to build a congregation. But like Abraham and Sarah, someone had to start it, and someone had to set the tone. Harvey and Cynthia did just that. They set the tone that gave birth to this Hamish congregation in quick order. And I felt that because of them and many others like them, I would be happy to serve as the rabbi of Temple Beth David for the rest of my career. And that is what I did. Cynthia came from a rather remarkable family. Her parents, Abe and Ida Marks, had emigrated from Europe. Abe was the owner of an amazing store on Summer Street in Boston known as A. Marks and Company. They sold appliances, stereo systems, and anything that a customer might dream of. Abe knew everyone. One of his most famous customers was Bill Russell of the Celtics. Cynthia worked there as a girl. Cynthia had a brother by the name of Sawyer and a sister, Debbie, who's with us today. Cynthia was a loving sister to Debbie and a devoted aunt to Debbie's 3 daughters, Lisa, Heidi, and Greta. Cynthia's parents, the Marks, lived in a large house on Brenton Street in Dorchester, which turned out to be a blessing, for when Ida's mother died, 6 of her siblings came to live with her. This came about because after the death of his wife, Ida's father married a woman who refused to have anything to do with his children. So Ida opened her home to 6 of her siblings, who immediately became close relatives to Cynthia, who was still a child. Because of this unusual circumstance, Cynthia got used to being around a large family. Eventually, when Ida's brothers and sisters became adults and married and had children of their own, the entire family would return to Ida and Abe's house in Dorchester for holidays such as Thanksgiving, which was celebrated by as many as 50 or 60 family members. Growing up in the presence of so many relatives shaped Cynthia in such a way that she became a very hospitable woman. Just like Sarah Imenu, like Sarah, our mother, who welcomed 3 angelic guests into her tent with an amazing meal. Cynthia, as you know, was a very gifted woman. She had studied interior design when she first attended college at the University of Cincinnati. I really don't think Cynthia needed to go to school to learn design. She was a natural. Even as a very young girl, when she was given a lovely dollhouse that still resides on her porch in Westwood, she thought of all kinds of ways of making new furniture or miniature artful objects for it. As a matter of fact, she kept remodeling that dollhouse well into her adulthood. Her real home at 1536 High Street in Westwood, which Harvey and she bought some 66 years ago in 1959, has undergone a number of transformations. Cynthia was the primary designer of these additions, including their spacious living and music room. Cynthia also designed and fashioned all kinds of lovely clothing for her family. Growing up, her 4 children wore primarily clothes with the Cynthia Atkins label. In memory of his beloved wife, I believe today Harvey is wearing a Cynthia Atkins original coat. Another wonderful example of Cynthia's sewing skill is the parochet, or curtain arc for the ark of the Beit Simcha, our chapel. The original design of a burning bush was done by Selma Safran. Cynthia transferred that design to the parochet. It includes a Hebrew phrase which is often placed on ark curtains, a phrase which is especially meaningful to me, Da lifnei mi ata omed, know before whom you are standing. When all 4 of her children were finally in school, Cynthia attended classes at Framingham State University in home economics. While in school, she had an internship in the Sharon school system and went on to teach home economics for 13 years there. One of the subjects she most enjoyed teaching was how to design and decorate a cake. When Proposition 2.5, limiting the amount of tax revenue in Massachusetts, when that came to be, Cynthia, who was a few years behind a more senior home ec teacher, lost her teaching position. Afterwards, Cynthia worked for Visiting Moms. She would travel around the area providing comfort and sage advice to new mothers. She also assumed a similar role for a number of younger women in this congregation. She would listen to them and provide them with whatever counsel they might need. Brian and Lindy Lieberman, originally from South Africa, first met Cynthia in her home when the Liebermans were participating in a new members' night. From that day on, Cynthia and Harvey were there for Brian and Lindy in a warm and loving parental role. Cynthia was also an authentic lover of music. At my very first high holiday service in the fall of 1970, I was introduced to the Cynthia Atkins family choir. Just to my right, underneath a rather low ceiling in the old Temple building, there was an organ that was played by Joel Berg. And just beyond him, Cynthia and her family, with a few other volunteer voices, sang their hearts out. Cynthia, of course, was the leader of the Atkins family choir. What a contribution to Jewish worship at Temple Beth David. Cynthia also sponsored music at her home. Each of her 4 children was required to take piano lessons, and then was allowed to choose an additional instrument for themselves. Liz took up the flute, Jane the French horn, Peg the violin and viola, and Charlie the cello. On occasion, she got them together to play lovely chamber music in their own home. Cynthia was also an amazing gardener. That can still be observed by viewing the many lovely plants both in and outside her home. And for many years, Cynthia was the unofficial overseer of landscaping and gardening at Temple Beth David. On a beautiful spring day, you could often find her sometimes all by herself, tending to the plants and flowers at our synagogue. What a beautiful example of giving to her beloved temple. Cynthia also was a gifted mahjong player and teacher. She often played 3 times a week with 3 different groups, a Westwood group, a Norwood group, and a Temple Beth David group. she was a formidable opponent. Harvey and Cynthia first met on a blind date in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They visited the beach that night and had a great time talking to each other. And that date didn't conclude, Harvey told me, until 2 o'clock in the morning. Harvey and Cynthia were married within the year at the old synagogue in Plymouth. They chose that site because their respective families were so large that they needed a smaller site to keep the congregation at a manageable size. In the 7 wedding benedictions, it describes bride and groom as Re'im Ha'ahuvim, which means friends who love each other. And that is exactly what they were. Harvey declared that Cynthia was his best friend. He knew he could turn to her with any ideas and problems that he was wrestling with, and that she would listen carefully to what he said and respond in an honest and loving way. And that is the way their conversation continued as a married couple for 72 years. They were in truth Re'im Ha'ovim, friends who loved and cared for one another. Harvey and Cynthia were devotees of chamber music. For many years they would attend chamber music concert at Sanders Theatre in Cambridge. They traveled together, often twice a year, with the Grand Circle Travel Group. And Harvey particularly recalls a trip to Peru, where they ascended to Machu Picchu, as well as a visit to the Great Wall in China in their 80s, when most people their age could not handle the rigors of that celebrated structure. They worked together, helping to assemble many of the new features of their home. And in time, they became experts in installing hardwood floors for themselves and for many members of their family. They also played bridge together, and as 2 intelligent, somewhat telepathic marriage partners, they were a great team. And on New Year's Eve, they loved to serve as hosts at the Trinity Church in Copley Square to the celebrants of Boston's first night. In Jewish tradition, Sarah is known as Sarah Imenu, Sarah our mother. Cynthia was certainly the matriarch, the mother of her family. She and Harvey had 4 children, Liz, Jane, Margaret, whom we now know as Peggy, and Charlie. Each child was born 2 years apart, and each child was born in a different city, reflecting Harvey's choice of a variety of physicians in the field of atomic science. Thus, Liz was born in Troy, New York, Jane in Pittsburgh, Peg in the Washington, D.C. area, and Charlie at the Norwood Hospital. Liz shared with me that Cynthia had a list of 4 requirements for each one of her children. Number 1, they had to attend religious school, up and through confirmation. 2, they had to learn how to swim. 3, they had to attend public school. And 4, they had to take at least 3 years of piano lessons. Not a bad to-do list for one's children. What Liz appreciated about her mother is the example that Cynthia made as a leader and community organizer. By example, Cynthia taught Liz that a woman can make a difference in this world. Liz also appreciated that her mother's loyalty and commitment to family. Liz was particularly thankful that her mother let her find her way in the world at her own pace, by taking one small step at a time. Liz has found great satisfaction in her profession as a piano tuner, as well as much joy in her marriage to Bob, who was immediately welcomed by Cynthia into the family. Jane is thankful to Cynthia for her mother's clear stance that there was nothing in the professional field that a woman could not do. Despite the negative vibes she got from her guidance counselors in the Westwood school system, Jane listened to her mother's words of wisdom. As a young girl, Jane, with her mom's help, formed a relationship with a woman ophthalmologist so that she could get to know a successful adult woman doctor. And so when Jane graduated high school, despite the negative advice of her guidance counselors, she applied to a joint 6-year program at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Albany Medical College, which enabled her to become a doctor at the age of 24. She has led a very successful career as an OB/GYN specialist in Connecticut and then in Houston, and looks back with gratitude to her mother's belief in the capacity of women to do anything they set their mind to. Jane and her husband Bill were married in this sanctuary. Bill has been a wonderful addition to the Atkins family. Peg as well absorbed her mother's strength by becoming an excellent professional in the field of tax and financial consulting. Peg is particularly proud of her mother's stance on women's reproductive rights. And like others in her family, Peg grew to appreciate her mother's tendency to tell it like it is. If she was doing something that needed correction in Cynthia's eyes, Cynthia would not hesitate to tell her. But then once Cynthia had registered her opinion, she was wise enough to know that each of her children had to be allowed to make their own life choices. Peg was named Margaret after a dear high school friend of Cynthia's who became a nun. Margaret was also a person whom Peg admired, this woman who became a nun. For eventually she left the convent, adopted a foster child with many handicaps, and helped that child fulfill her potential. Peg said that Cynthia and Harvey may have expected her to marry a Hasid, or an observant Orthodox man because of her love for traditional Judaism. But instead she chose a Scotsman, Colin, who was not Jewish. But once again, Cynthia welcomed him into the family and appreciated that Colin was a great partner for Peg. Charlie's death in his early 60s was a great loss to his parents, Cynthia and Harvey. They recognized, however, that Charlie had lived a very full and productive life. He went to medical school at Emory in Atlanta and became a skilled psychiatrist and a prolific writer, composing 17 books, many of which dealt with the psychiatric issues that were important to Charlie. Charlie was gay, and in time met a wonderful partner in Steve. Although Cynthia and Harvey were from a different generation, they accepted Charlie's declaration of who he was and were glad to welcome his husband Steve into the family. Cynthia and Harvey often drove down to Charlie and Steve's home in Connecticut to help both of them with their special building and design skills. Cynthia and Harvey had 3 grandchildren, Jake, Peg and Colin's son, and Julia and Nathan, Jane and Bill's children. When Jake was just an infant, Harvey and Cynthia took care of him regularly once a week. Jake has been a great source to his grandparents for many years. He too celebrated his bar mitzvah right here in this sanctuary. I'm wearing a yarmulke from that day, which I believe was crafted by his Aunt Jane. Jake has gone on to marry Kokava, who is a cantor, and both of them have brought a lot of knowledge to Harvey and Cynthia. Julia, Cynthia's granddaughter, made a decision in her adult life that she wanted to try to make her way professionally in the city of Boston. She came here and Cynthia was on hand to welcome her and provide her with love and advice on how to make friends and get started in a new city. Julia's child, Emma, who is named right here in this synagogue, is a very beloved great-grandchild to Cynthia. And Julia's husband, Anderson, is also a welcome addition to the family. Cynthia's grandson, Nathan, lives in Mobile, Alabama with his wife, Allison. It's a long way from Boston to Mobile, but Harvey and Cynthia made the trip to celebrate their great-grandsons, Isaac and Levi. Looking back, one can observe that there are a whole range of different types of people who become part of Harvey and Cynthia's family. It is to their credit they have welcomed all of them. I began my eulogy with the suggestion that, like Sarah, the founding mother of the Jewish people, Cynthia is the founding mother of Temple Beth David. At services, especially these last 10 years or so, when Harvey and Cynthia had joined our wonderful Saturday morning minyan in the library, at almost every adult education class that I taught, and in their remarkable Havarah, indeed of every aspect of Temple life, Cynthia was there to support this congregation, which she loved so much. I am so thankful to her, for she was a great source of love and support to Barbara and to me. As a young rabbi, I looked to her for wisdom and guidance. Throughout our long relationship, I felt blessed to be her rabbi, for she, along with Harvey, continued to support me and to infuse optimism into congregational life, even at our lowest moment when a fire destroyed our synagogue in 1987. How blessed I and all of you are to have had Cynthia as a force and spirit for good in our temple. When Sarah Amena's life comes to an end in the book of Genesis, the Torah begins to inform us of her death with the words, Chaye Sarah, which literally means the lives of Sarah. How remarkable it is that even at the moment of her death, the Torah emphasizes her life and expresses it in the plural, the lives of Sarah. I like to think that this plural word, Chaye, highlights the understanding that Sarah, in her 127 years, had many different lives. She was a wife, and she was a mother. And the Midrash goes on to suggest that she was a prophetess. She was a wet nurse supplying mother's milk for women who needed it. And she was a missionary, joining Abraham to help bring outsiders into the belief of the one God. Like Sarah Imenu, like Sarah our mother, Cynthia in her 96 years had many lives. She was a designer and a skilled seamstress. She was a musician with a lovely voice. She was a teacher to high school students. She was a comforting resource for young mothers and a friend and counselor to many other women. She was a dutiful daughter and sister. She was a loving wife and partner to Harvey. She was an amazing mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, and she was the founding matriarch of Temple Beth David. She had an amazing life because she lived every day to the fullest. May we learn to do the same. Zecher Tzadika Livracha, may the memory of a righteous woman, Cynthia Atkins, be for a blessing, and let us say, Amen. At this time, we're going to continue with the singing of Cynthia's favorite synagogue song, Adon Olam. And it ends with a verse which she always liked to say in English too, because it was very meaningful to her, and especially this moment. It says, V'yadi afkiruchi ve'edishan ve'ayra ve'imruchi gviati Adonai li lo ra. Into your hands, O God, I entrust my spirit, when I sleep and when I wake. And with my spirit, my body also. Adonai is with me, I shall not fear.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Lein Nasa V'Hefzo Kol Azar Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kiflot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hoveh Ve'hu Yiyeh V'Tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'ein Sheni Lehamshilo Lehachbira Ve'ireshit Ve'itachlit Ve'lo ha'oz Ve'hamizrach Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai go'ali Ve'tzur chevli Ve'etzara Ve'hu nisi Umanos li Menat kosi Ve'yom erah Be'yado Akidruchi Ve'disham Ve'ayira Ve'imruchi Geviati Adonai li Ve'lo ira.
Biado afkid ruchi, into your hands I entrust my spirit. Cynthia died peacefully in her sleep on Thursday morning. Her spirit is now entrusted to God, and this is a blessing. Our hearts are full of sadness, and our hearts are full of gratitude. Cynthia's life will be remembered as a giver of life. Her legacy is now entrusted to us. As our tradition teaches, love is stronger than death. Cynthia's love and spirit are eternal. I invite you to join with me in the refrain of We Remember Her. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember her.
in the blueness of the sky and the warmth of the sun, we remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. O Holy One of blessing, you who heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, grant comfort and consolation to all of us who are in mourning. Fill our lives with the acts of loving kindness and truth, which serve as the genuine memorial to Cynthia Atkins. The deep bond of love will remain unbroken. In a moment, we will rise for the El Malay Rachamim prayer, the prayer that asks God that Cynthia's soul will rest in peace. And following this prayer, we will make our way to Sharon Memorial Cemetery as we escort her to her final resting place. You are welcome to join in 3 evenings of Shiva starting tonight, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Atkins home in Westwood, with the Shiva service at 7 p.m. on those nights. And we will remember Cynthia with Kaddish here at Temple Beth David starting this Shabbat. If you're able, please rise.
El Malay Rachamim, Shochen במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת שושנה בת אברהם אבא וחיה שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בשאת כנפיו לעולמים בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר
God of abundant mercy, God Most High, may the soul of our loved one, Cynthia Atkins, Shoshana Bat Avram Abba Vechaya, who has gone into eternity, find perfect rest in the embrace of your wings. Together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven, compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace. And together we say,
Amen.
Amen.